Okay, well, it looks like the filing has slowed down a little and we're into the 10 o'clock hour here on the Pacific Coast. So I'm just gonna begin and let people continue to file in. Welcome to our Q&A webinar. Thanks everybody for joining us today in our Q&A webinar on ArcGIS Maps for Adobe Creative Cloud. So throughout this presentation, you might hear us refer to it as just Maps for Adobe, which is a nickname we have for the product, but the full name is ArcGIS Maps for Adobe Creative Cloud. We're going to kick off the live stream with some introductions so that you all know who you're hearing from today. And I'll start since I'm talking. Here we are, all three of us. My name is Sarah Bell. I'm a cartographer and a data visualization designer. I've been at Esri now for 7 years. I just had my 7-year anniversary. And during those 7 years, I've been able to work on hundreds of large and small mapping projects. And I'm also one of the product engineers for Maps for Adobe. And I'll pass it on to Anna so she can introduce herself.
Cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Breton. I am a product engineer on the ArcGIS Maps for Adobe Creative Cloud team, along with Sarah and Madura. I've been at Esri for just over a year now, and I get to play around a lot with our extension and with ArcGIS Pro and make cool maps. And I'll be chatting a bit about that today. Also, Sarah, I just wanted to mention that I see quite a few responses in the chat window, people all over the world. So, yeah. Hello, everyone. Thanks for chatting, and I will pass it on to you, Madura.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, my name is Madhura. I am a lead product engineer at Esri, and right now I work on ArcGIS Maps for Adobe. I have worked at Esri for 14 years now, and during this time, I've worked on several different ArcGIS products, extensions, and technologies. On the Maps for Adobe team, I get to work with the development team to help them bring to life features and ideas from folks like you. So thank you for joining in. And I'll hand it back to Sarah.
Thanks. All right. So I looks like I needed to expand the window. Well, wow, we have Wes Rand from Las Vegas, Nevada, Wahaj Habib from Ireland, Travis from Iowa, Rezi from New Jersey, or no, I'm sorry, Jen from New Jersey. Oh, amazing. All right. So many people. Thanks, Anna, for letting me know. All right. So this webinar is going to be a little different than what we typically do. Anna, Madura, and myself, we've had a lot of great opportunities to give presentations to audiences on what Maps for Adobe is and its various features as the product has grown over the past few years. And after these presentations, we get a lot of great questions from the audiences, and maybe some of you have been in that audience. But those questions come through GeoNet or other ways of contact, and many of those folks have the same or similar questions. So after my most recent presentation in late October, which was at the North American Cartographic Information Society, I decided to have this webinar where we publicly answer some of those questions. So when you registered for this live stream, you were asked if you had any questions to submit them, and we've compiled those questions and kind of the most commonly asked questions among that set of questions. And we're going to be answering them today. And many of these will be answered or will be accompanied with live demos. So most of these answers are going to require a basic understanding of Maps for Adobe. But if you're new to Maps for Adobe, don't worry, you still will gain from this live stream. And also Madura will be sharing some getting started resources at the end of this presentation. So here is the overall agenda. We'll start off with a brief description of what Maps for Adobe is, just to all get on the same page. And then we're going to be answering questions pertaining to licensing and requirements. And then we're going to be answering questions about the Maps for Adobe direct workflow. And what I mean by this is there are two different ways, two different avenues to make a map. You can make a map directly within the extension inside of Illustrator, or you can also make a map from ArcGIS Pro and it'll open it in Illustrator with the Maps for Adobe extension. And then we're going to move on to the road ahead. So then we will hopefully be able to follow this with a live Q&A session. So stick around if you want to do that. We won't be able to get to all of your questions, but our fabulous webinar organizer, Ray, will share some information for if we don't get to your question, how you can follow up, because we want to get to everybody's question if possible. So what is Maps for Adobe? Maps for Adobe is an Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop extension that was developed by Esri. And you can add geographic content directly in Illustrator or Photoshop as raster and vector layers. And you get access to tons of data-driven maps, and also you get access to creating these data-driven maps. And like I mentioned before, there are two workflows. There's making maps directly with the extension, and then there's our very recent development of creating maps in Pro and then opening them in Illustrator with Maps for Adobe. So moving on to the first set of questions, the licensing and requirements. So after reading through all the questions about licensing and requirements, they all boil down to these 4 basic questions, which I'll cover right now. Do I need Adobe Creative Cloud to use Maps for Adobe? What are the different licenses for Maps for Adobe? How much does Maps for Adobe cost? And what version of ArcGIS Pro do I need for the AIX workflow? So let's take a look at those answers. The first answer is yes, you need Adobe Creative Cloud to use Maps for Adobe. And the reason for this is you can think of Maps for Adobe as a link to Esri's online web mapping platform, ArcGIS Online. So the cloud part of the Adobe Creative Cloud is one of the necessary ingredients to make this web-driven map creation possible. And to use Maps for Adobe, you will need version 23 or later for Adobe Illustrator. And in Photoshop, you'll need version 20 or later. And Maps for Adobe offers 3 different licenses, and maybe you're wondering which one is right for you. I want to talk about the first one, because this is going to pertain to a lot of you, and you might not know this. The first one is the ArcGIS Creator or GIS Professional license. And this is already included in your account if you're one of those account holders. So Esri has a lot of apps for these ArcGIS accounts, and ArcGIS Maps for Adobe Creative Cloud is one of these apps that you already have access to. So you can download it and start using all of the features available in Maps for Creative Cloud today. We also have a Plus version for $10 a month. This is for folks who want to use Maps for Adobe and many of their wonderful features, but don't want or have an ArcGIS Creator or GIS Professional account yet. And then we also have a limited access complimentary account at no fee. And the final question, what version of ArcGIS Pro do I need for the AIX workflow? You need ArcGIS Pro 2.5 or later. That's the first version of Pro, where this functionality to export at what we call an AIX file, and Anna will get into that in a moment. That's the first version of Pro where that capability existed. But keep in mind that we want you to keep updated with ArcGIS Pro because this functionality is continuously growing. And a lot of these questions can be answered at this URL you see here, esriurl.com/mapsforadobe, which is a tiny URL, or this longer one right here. And this is our product page. So on our product page, if I go to resources, I can find out all sorts of information about Maps for Adobe, including downloading it. And we have this handy Get Started tab where some of the questions that I just answered are right here. But I want to go to this functionality matrix, we call it. So if you're looking for what license type might be right for you, like I already mentioned, you might already have access to it with your ArcGIS Online Creator or GIS Professional account. But if you're looking to make commercial and revenue generating maps and want all of the functions that come with ArcGIS Maps for Adobe Creative Cloud, except for the ones that require an ArcGIS Align account, you might want to go with the Plus account for $10 a month. And then if you wanted to give it a trial run, maybe you will start with the complimentary account. So that answers the questions I wanted to get to for the licensing and requirements. Now you should see a little bit of the North Cascades Mountains while I open up Adobe Illustrator. instead of jumping back from Illustrator and Photo and PowerPoint, I'm just going to do the rest of my slides in Illustrator as we move on to the questions about the Maps for Adobe Direct workflow. So the first question I wanted to answer on this workflow is it possible to view data attributes in Maps for Adobe? And the answer is yes. So let me demonstrate how you can do that. So I'm in Illustrator. I have this map that I've already created with Maps for Adobe. I synced it, which means I defined my Minnesota. I'm going to actually change the map, the base map, so you can see a little bit more reference information. So this map board is drawn over the state of Minnesota in the map boards panel. If I go to the compilation window, this shows all of the data that I have already added to my map. I synced it, but let me show you how you can access data attributes. So if I'm just going to show just the counties for now. The most straightforward way to view attributes in Maps for Adobe is to, in the compilation window, click the Show Attributes button to toggle it on, and then click on a feature. So this shows me the data attributes that are associated with my US counties layer, but it also shows the values for the item that I clicked. So this is St. Louis County in Minnesota. In 2010, its population was 200,226. But what if I have several layers on? Let's see how that would turn out. I'll click on this. And so what this shows is that if you highlight them, it lets you know, okay, which data layer do I want to see the attributes? Let's say it's the states. So I click on Minnesota, and then I get those attributes. So this is in the entire country's states layer, and it's showing me just the Minnesota values for each of these attributes. So that's the most straightforward way to view the data, and that's really useful if you want to know how to style your map like I have here. So what you're seeing here, and I apologize, this yellow is very faint, but that's because they're the least densely populated counties. Because what I've done is I styled this set of counties by its population density. So I already created a filter, which this was the entire counties of all of the United States. I filtered to only show the counties in Minnesota, and then I styled it with a choropleth by just hovering over the ellipse to get the layer options and clicking change style. So you can see in choose attribute to show, it's saying population per square mile right here, and that's what's going on. I can click this drop down and view all of the attributes. So that's another way you can see the attributes if you were creating a data visualization layer of your counties. So I could select, say, the number of farms in 2012 as the attribute to show, and then immediately my map has updated to show that attribute. I can go in options and change the way that the, let's say I just wanted to do equal interval. So that is how the map would look then. But I'm going to click cancel because I want to keep it as population density. So those are just two of the ways that you can view your data attributes in Maps for Adobe. So I'm going to go to the next question. Are there plans to expand integration to be two-way with things like ArcGIS Online so that we can publish maps as a web map in ArcGIS Online? So the answer to this question is that it's already possible. If you are an ArcGIS creator or GIS professional account user, you already can publish your maps from Maps for Adobe to your ArcGIS Online account. So let me show you that with this Minnesota map. So, and why would you want to do this? Well, let's say that I live in Minnesota. I don't live in Minnesota, but I was born there. And let's say I always want to use these same data layers repeatedly. Maybe I work for the state and I always have to access these layers. Instead of adding them one by one, it's nice to have a web map compiled all together. So that's one reason you might want to be using web maps when you're making maps with Maps for Adobe. So the way you do that is in the compilation window. When you have all of the data that you want for your web map, you go to this menu up here, and there's three options. You would choose Share to ArcGIS Online. And for ArcGIS Online users, these parameters are going to look familiar to you because they're all of the parameters that you need to create a web map. So I would give it Minnesota top density, give it some sort of name. Tags are required, so I'll just give it Minnesota summary webinar map. Now I have the option to put it in any one of my libraries that I wanted in my own personal account. I can also share with everyone in my organization. If I wanted to, I can share with everybody so that anyone on ArcGIS Online can access this, or I can just keep it private to myself. I'll do that for now. And then I just click OK. And I get this immediate link, map saved. So let's check it out. I may have to log in, yes. So I'm logging into my ArcGIS Online account that I just shared the map to. And here it is. And when you share a map with Maps for Adobe, just to let you know which one it was, we do slap on the icon right in the thumbnail. And you can edit your thumbnail however you want, but that's just a handy way to know which maps were created with the mapping extent. So let's open it up and take a look. And it has all of the styles that I added to my map in Maps for Adobe. It's saved, including the data filters, the data styling. It's very convenient. So another thing that's pretty cool is I could add more content. One thing that I really like when I'm making lower 48 states, when I say lower 48, I mean the maps that include only the states in the contiguous United States. If I could just click that and add it to my map. This looks like it's missing Michigan's. And then I could say share to ArcGIS Online. It adds that automatically to that web map. So it's very convenient. I'm going to move on to the next question. So this is more of a feature request or a statement, but I really wanted to cover it. It says, I really wish the ability to change projection was in the map board window instead of the compilation window. So I wanted to address this because the ability to reproject maps is a somewhat new feature in Maps for Adobe. And Madura is going to touch upon some aspects that pertain to this in the Road Ahead section as well. So let's go to Maps for Adobe to see what this refers to. So here we are in the map board, and quick refresher, the map board panel is where you define your map's extent, and you do that by either importing a web map and letting the web map's extent define your map extent, or you can manually draw a map board. I'll just do one again over the lower 48 United States, or the contiguous. I'll give it a more realistic scale for a map of this size and extent. And there we go. So because making a map here in the map board is essentially a link to ArcGIS Online, this is essentially a live web map. We're accessing the web. So because of that link, the default map projection is Web Mercator. And so for those of you who haven't heard of Web Mercator before, it is the most commonly used map projection in interactive web-based maps. So your phone's map navigation map is most likely in Web Mercator. And very briefly speaking, let me show a visual, just I think it helps. It helps me anyways. Here's a good example. So very briefly speaking, projected coordinate systems are the way we translate a 3D ellipsoidal Earth onto a 2D flat plane. So that was the visual for that. So when you draw your map in Web Mercator and then add data to your map, let me see, I'm just gonna add one of my favorite layers, world countries, close. I'll just remove this base map for now. So this is in Web Mercator as well. And now I would maybe choose a more appropriate projection. So one that I like for this is Elber's equal area. It's a great, great projection for this particular map extent when you're making what we call thematic maps. So notice like this is the 49th parallel, the border between US and Canada from Minnesota to Washington State. And it has this nice curve, and that's because the map has been reprojected to the USA Alberta's equal area. So we would like to look into this sort of feature request so that when you define your map extent, it can also be in your final map projection. And I wanted to cover this because I want you to know that we do listen to your requests and we take them seriously, and they help us push this product further. So while I can't say that this is a feature yet, I want the person who asked this question to know that I am very grateful for the question and we're looking into that. And question 4, is there a good way to find quality, reliable vector content without all the trial and error? And in parentheticals, I do favorite them when I find them. I'm an ArcGIS novice, so I'm probably missing something as I try to figure out the Illustrator plugin. This is a great question, and I don't think you're missing anything in particular, but let's just cover some of the interesting things about adding data when you're searching from ArcGIS Online. So to add data, you go to the Add Content button and you can add layers, so a local file from your machine. You can overwrite from a web map. You can add places, which is really cool, and you can add layers from file. Add layers from files, the local data. Add layers is when you're searching from ArcGIS Online. So this is a very common way to add data, just clicking the ArcGIS Online library and searching all of ArcGIS Online. So ArcGIS Online, Esri's online web mapping platform, has a lot of users, and they do things in many different ways. They add data, and a lot of you are these folks, that range from simple shapes, like maybe just the counties in Minnesota with only a dozen features or so, to rasters, to very complicated data with thousands of features. So searching for data from ArcGIS Online can return a lot of interesting results. So let's say I wanted to add the US Census populated places. So this says, warning, one or more layers are not visible at scale. And this is one of the issues that the person asking the question might be referring to. And what this means is that the user or the person who created the original data, so for example, let's say I created this original data. There's a specific scale that you can set your data to. So if I wanted here, my visibility range, right now I have no restrictions. If I zoom all the way out so I can see the whole planet, I can still see these counties. If I zoom into the city block level, I can still see these counties. They all pop up. But I could restrict this. I could say, I only want these to be visible at this, between these scales. And so now we can't see it till I zoom in a little bit. I have to zoom in a little bit more, and boom, there. Now I can see the counties. So when you're in Maps for Adobe, when I tried to add that data layer here, my map board scale, which you can view the properties in the map board options dialog box here, this scale is outside the range that the person who set that data layer set the scale range. So that's one of the issues for why you might not see the data show up. But we don't restrict you from finding it in a search because you have the option to go back to your map boards panel and change the map scale. Perhaps you find out what the scale actually is, and then you can update the map scale in that map boards property dialog box that I showed you a moment ago. So we don't restrict that. Another reason is that the user might not have granted permissions for everybody to use the data. So that's another reason why you might see the data show up in a search but can't add it. And then we also have this shield to show that some people have to subscribe to this to be able to access it. So this shows an extra level of restriction. And then the final reason is that the final of the reasons that I am going to discuss today is that there is a maximum feature allowance for data to draw. So when you're making a web map like this one, I'll just zoom out a little. There is a set, web map performance is very important to a lot of people who are creating web maps. And if you are drawing thousands and thousands of features, the web map can perform very slow. So there's a 2,000 feature limit on the amount of data that can draw. And if the user hasn't overridden this limit, then it's not going to appear here. But again, I want to go to this esri.url.com/maps for Adobe. You can find out more information about non-drawing layers right here. So you can troubleshoot those issues. And here's a question that we get sometimes. Are there plans to integrate Maps for Adobe with other mapping products? Some people ask this sometimes, and a lot of people don't know that you can use Maps for Adobe in Photoshop. So I just wanted to point that out. We have, in the cartography world, Adobe Illustrator is a very popular tool. So we developed that tool. We have looked into integrating Maps for Adobe into other Adobe applications, but we have no concrete plans for this at this time. And so now I'm going to pass it on to Anna, and she's going to talk about the ArcGIS Pro to Illustrator workflow.
Cool. Thank you, Sarah. Let me share my screen. And here we are. Cool. So like Sarah just mentioned, I'm going to be talking about the ArcGIS Pro to Illustrator, or the AIX workflow. And I'm sure some of you are familiar with this workflow already, and some of you are not. So let's just jump into the questions. The first question is, what's the most efficient way to export maps from ArcGIS to Adobe Illustrator? Or how to export to Adobe in order to visualize and manipulate vector layers. So I kind of just combined both of these questions together because they're related. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do this. So we're going to go ahead and jump into ArcGIS Pro for a quick demo. And here we are. I'm going to open up a map. And here we are in Pro. We have a map. We have some vector data, some raster data, and let's say we want to bring this into Illustrator. The workflow is pretty quick and simple. All you have to do is go to the Share tab at the top and then click Map Export. And this export panel will pop up. And I'm sure a lot of you have used this to export all kinds of files before. But we're going to focus on this AIX, or Adobe Illustrator Exchange file type. And as Sarah mentioned before, this file type is available in ArcGIS Pro 2.5 or later. It will not show up in your file type options if you're not at Pro 2.5 or later. And also, again, we recommend keeping Pro as up to date as possible, so you can see all the latest and greatest feature and bug updates. So make sure that AIX file type is selected, and then you can go ahead and play around with your export options if you want to change those around. I'm going to keep them just the way they are, and all you have to do is click Export. I'm going to overwrite this, and you'll see your file process. And once it's ready to go, you'll get this green box here saying export complete. And then we're going to jump back into Illustrator really quickly here. Oops. So in Illustrator, the next step would be to make sure you're logged in to the Maps for Adobe extension. And again, to do that, you're going to go Window, Extensions, and then select the ArcGIS Maps for Adobe Creative Cloud option. I'm already logged in, but if you're not, you'll get that login page, and then you'll get your compilation and mapboard windows. So to open up that AIX file that I just exported in Pro, all I'm going to do is go File, Open, and then search for the location that I exported that file, and then open it up. The other way to do this, to open up the AIX file, would be to just click that View Exported File link at the bottom once your file is exported in Pro. And if you're already logged in, it'll go ahead and process that file for you in Illustrator. And here you can see we have our file that we had. All the layers are organized the same way they are in Pro. And I'm going to touch upon another feature that you can use with AIX files, and that is our spatially enabled AIX capability. So if we look at our map boards window first, we can see that a map board has been generated to the extent of the map that I exported in Pro. So I had my Pro export. It was the extent of the entire Earth, and that map board was created for us automatically. In the compilation window, we can select a vector-based map that will draw, again, to that same extent as our profile. And it'll be projected accordingly if you have a projection. And so once you have your AIX file opened, you can actually go ahead and add more content to that file once it's been processed. So I can go ahead and click Add Layers. I can search through all of those libraries that Sarah was talking about. I'm going to add this World Time Zones layer. Just click the plus here. And then I'm going to change the style a little bit just for fun. Add some color, add some transparency. And you can see that data that I added is projected properly as well. I'm going to turn this off. And then if I want to, I can go ahead and sync this data to this map file and it'll add it for us. And I already synced up a file before just because it takes a couple moments. But as you can see, once you do it, it adds that World Time Zones data to your file. The colors, the transparency are all based on how you edited them in the compilation window. And we still see all of our data underneath the world regions from our AIX file from Pro. So I can actually let me turn this off. So this is the original profile, and then I synced and added that World Time Zones data once it was in Illustrator opened and processed. So that's one of our newer features, the spatially enabled AIX file. So your data is tied based off of its geographic information, projections, and all of that. So it's really, really handy. You don't have to go into Pro and export every time you want to make changes. You can actually just make those changes inside of Illustrator. If you need to add data that you forgot about, if you want to change your map a bit, this is the way to do it. And it's really, really handy, and I use it quite often. So so that is the first question. Let's jump into the next one. The second question is, can I use custom styles like John Nelson's styles in Pro with maps for Adobe? And we're gonna take a look in Pro again. The quick answer is you can. So let's take a look at a custom style map that I made. I used John Nelson's Lego custom style. It's a pretty cool one, makes everything look like it was built with Legos. And then I just went ahead again and exported as an AIX file type here, clicked export, and then opened that file up in Illustrator. And let's take a look at what that looks like. And here it is. It looks exactly as it should. Now this style works really great. And some custom styles work really great in Pro, but may not work all that great in Illustrator. And this is because of their use of images in the layers. So as a map maker, you may want to consider where you want to use this type of styling, the custom Pro styling, whether it's better to keep it in Pro, take it into Illustrator. That is up to you as a map maker to determine. So keep that in mind. Yeah, but this Lego one works pretty well. So we're gonna jump into our next question. This next question is, how can I remove background layers from exports? And for this question, we are going to jump into Pro again, just for a quick demo here. So in Pro, if you have a layout, in traditional PDF exports, there are backgrounds for your pages in layouts. And essentially, it just means that there is a big rectangle added in your page as a background layer. And some people like this and some people don't. But fortunately, in our favorite panel, the export panel, you have that option to keep that layout background or turn it off. And right here, you can just toggle to keep it or turn it off. So super easy. If you want to keep it, you can. If you don't have to. And I'm going to jump into Illustrator and show you the difference here. So here I have that layout exported, and you can see at the bottom here we end with our topographic base map and there's no background layer. This is the option where I turned that background layer off. If we look at this map, I have that background layer on, so you can see here we have that rectangle. You can go ahead and edit it however you'd like. Let's make it a very hideous purple. Or if you have a better eye for color, you can choose something better, but we're going to turn that off now because that hurts my eyes. So that's the answer to that question. You have control of whether to keep that on or off. The next question is, how does curved text come across from the AIX to Illustrator workflow? Is each letter on a separate text box or is it on one path? And I'm going to show you a map export to answer this question. And here we have a map showing Central America labeled with the country names. You can see Costa Rica, Panama are on a curve and they're all on one path. So that makes your life easy. Quick answer to that question. And let's jump into our last question here. Last question is 3D supported? And this is something we come across. Sometimes we get requests for this. Currently, 3D is not completely supported. So you can actually export scenes in 3D from ArcGIS Pro. And those exports will be exported as image layers. So you can't manipulate them the same way you would vector layers. They're just image layers in Illustrator. And kind of like I mentioned, this is something we get requests on. And if you're interested in 3D being supported, we, like Sarah mentioned also, we recommend you let us know. Let us know in GeoNet or on Twitter or send us an email. The more requests we get, the more interested we see users are in a certain feature or functionality, the higher up in our priority list it goes. So if you're interested in 3D support, let us know. And with that, I am going to pass it on to Madura. Let's see if I can figure this out. Here we go.
Can you see my screen, Anna? Maybe you can confirm and you can hear my sound?
Yep, all looks good.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'm just going to share a few more pieces of information that might be useful as you continue to explore Maps for Adobe, or you're new at Maps for Adobe and you want to get started. As Sarah mentioned in her slides, the quickest and the best way to get started is from our product page, esri.com/maps4 FOR Adobe will bring you here. And this is where you will download the product, and you can download a separate installer for your Mac if you're working on a Mac, or for a PC, there's a separate installer. So this is a good place to get started. Also, something that we have recently introduced and added is this resources page. And the resources page is useful to get you to the documentation, the help system, which is up here in the tabs. But there are a lot of other useful resources on this page as well. If you want to get started with some tutorials, self-learning, self-paced tutorials, you can start your learning pathways here at this button. If you want to read some of our blogs, we have them all uh, collected here on this page. A quick link to the functionality matrix, which Sarah talked about a little bit as well. And I'll just quickly jump in here for a second to show you some of the key things. Now, when you are considering what license level is best for you, consider not only the features that you might want access to and the capabilities, but also consider how you want to use the maps that you generate. So there is some restriction based on which license you use and how you use the maps you create for commercial purposes or for revenue generating purposes. Plus or ArcGIS Online is going to be your option. Complementary is primarily designed for personal use. Also in here, there are some videos. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is our GeoNet link, which is our community site where all of you can talk to each other. You can also reach out to our page on the GeoNet site. From the GeoNet site, you can reach to our questions, our blogs, also the ideas page. And ideas is where you can add some of the great ideas that you have even today in this webinar. And we'll go through some of the questions later, but there's some great ideas that you guys have asked us for. So you can come into this community page and log your ideas. This allows us to curate this list and bring it back to our management team and kind of talk to them about what some of you are requesting and how we can prioritize them to add it to the future development roadmap for the product. So with that, I also quickly wanted to share with you some of the ideas and features that we're looking into on our roadmap. So this roadmap is similar to if you've seen an ArcGIS Pro roadmap, it's similar to that. It's categorized as near term, mid-term, and long term. And near term means in the next release or two releases, we plan to address these features here. Midterm is next 2 to 3 releases. We plan to address those features, and long term are things that we have thought about, but they're currently not planned in any specific release. So given that, just quickly wanted to talk through some of the uh, capabilities that we plan to add on our roadmap. A lot of you have requested for better guidance and tutorials, and I'm happy to share that we are working on new tutorials, also a new book that's going to talk specifically about how to use ArcGIS Maps for Adobe. So that should be coming in 2021. We're also adding capability for ArcGIS Enterprise. So as Anna and Sarah both showed you, you can currently use ArcGIS online, but for those of you who are working behind your firewall and need to work with Adobe and ArcGIS behind your firewall, we're going to add capability so you can use the extension in an enterprise environment. At this point, there is some support for vector tile layers through your AIX workflows. We're continuing to improve that experience and add more capabilities to it. So that's something we're looking into. Also in future, we're going to add support so that you can browse through all groups in your organization. So at this point, if some of you might be familiar, you need to add a special M4CC tag which allows you to browse the groups in the extension in the mapboard and compilation window. But in future, we're going to add capability so that you can browse all the groups that you are a part of from your ArcGIS organization. Also in midterm, we're going to try and take a look at enabling geo-enabled PDFs, so you can continue down your downstream workflows and create geo-enabled PDFs. We want to take a closer look at accessibility of the extension and add improvements. We also want to um, focus on improving and enhancing our mapboard creation workflows. So this is going to address some of the things that Sarah mentioned related to projection. In addition to that, we also want to take a look at how you can easily draw mapboards anywhere on the world at any rotation with any projection, and potentially using shapes as a precursor as well. So those are some of the things that we've thought through and are hoping to implement in the midterm. Some of our long-term goals include improving the Photoshop experience by creating a layered Photoshop file. If you currently use it, it creates a flat output, but we kind of want to improve that experience. If you're familiar with our asset application workflow where you can apply custom symbols, brushes, and swatches in Illustrator to your map artwork, we kind of want to do something similar with character style. So that's something on our list. And in addition to that, we're looking to support time-aware layers, which could include real-time data, and also 3D scenes, something that we're hoping to support in the long term. Again, the goal is to share this with you so you can reach back to us or share with us on our ideas site and on our GeoNet pages. What is it that you are really looking for? Some of you asked some interesting questions about can we move the graphics to a shape? If that's something that gets a lot of traction, that could show up in our roadmap in future. Also, we're a small team, so our list is at this point small, but we're evolving, and I really want to encourage you to interact with us through our community and our ideas pages. So with that, I want to hand it off to Ray to wrap up.
Yes, so as we head into our Q&A section, in case we didn't get to your question, and we will cover some in the Q&A section, we will send out a follow-up email after this where you can submit your question, and we will be making sure to answer that question as soon as we can. Also in the future, as you can see here, we're featuring some of our map contest winners from 2020. That is happening again in 2021. We're so excited to do our annual map contest, so look out for that in 2021. So with that, I will pass it on to Sarah, Madhura, and Anna for a quick Q&A wrap up.
So Sarah and Anna, if you want to unmute yourself, there's some really good questions that came through our questions. I'll kind of hand off some of them to you. I think we have 10 minutes so we can get through some of them. So I'll start at the top here. Sarah, you kind of showed about the attributes. Could you perhaps talk a little bit about how one can query or do any data query type functions in the extension?
Sure. Yeah, is it possible to share my screen?
Sure, I'll stop sharing and you can.
Yeah, cool. Let's just go to Maps for Adobe really quick. If I'm going to, can you all see my screen?
I cannot yet. Anna, can you see Sarah's screen?
No, not.
Oh.
Ah, there it is.
Yep, I see it now.
All right, so here's this map of the countries that I added and I reprojected it. Let's say I wanted to add counties to this. I have it in my favorites, which I access a lot. So it's just the USA counties. It's a lot of counties. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna add states. Just another layer I use a lot. There we go. So if so disclaimer, I'm working on a daily build, so sometimes things work slowly or have a little bit of an issue working at all because it is the latest development, not the one yet released. So here, I'll just do this over. I'll add, excuse me, USA states in my favorites. It's not reprojected now. So you can see the shape is a little different in this map. I can go to filter, and let's say I wanted to just show, I don't even know, like population above a certain amount. Population in 2017 is at least 3 million. Well, let's say 4 million because I do know there are some states that are less than 4 million. Apply. There you go. So that's one of the ways you can do some data filters. If that was a pretty simple data filter, I could make it a little more complicated. I could say data, add another expression. So it's at least this, and also the number of farms, I think was maybe not, maybe I don't know, the square mileage is at least a certain amount, and I don't know what a good number would be to enter here, but let's say you wanted it to be a certain amount of square miles. You could apply that. So that's one way you can do some data filtering right in Maps for Adobe. I do use that a lot. I hope that answers the question. I'll pass it back over to you, Madhura.
Thanks, Sarah. And I hope that answers the question too. Sorry, I lost my trail here about who really asked that question. But the idea is that you can share you can query the data to some extent in the extension when you add it through the compilation panel. I have another question here for ArcGIS Pro. Maybe Anna, if you'd like to take a stab at this, is there are some export options in ArcGIS Pro, like fonts and compression. Are there any pointers about when one should use these, and what are some of those? Oh.
Yes, let me share my screen, sorry. Okay. Yeah, so let's see, Pro exports. Let me open up Pro here in the export panel. So when to switch around and play around with the properties here, it kind of depends on your data, whether you're using raster data, vector data, that will affect how you want to play around with your properties. Obviously, if you don't have any raster data, you're not going to need to play with the resolution here and other things like that. Fonts, embedding fonts, sometimes that's applicable, sometimes it's not. We have quite a few resources on best practices on our side, and then also from the Pro, on the Pros side, on what all of these export properties do. So I definitely recommend reading those resources. You'll kind of learn what's best, what's the best practice through those. Kind of like I mentioned, things like this layout background, clipping to a graphic extent, all have different capabilities. I don't think I have time to kind of go through all of them. So reading up on those practices, we have resources for those. So I definitely recommend going into that. But again, it kind of all depends on your data and how you want your map or layout exported. And I hope that answered the question.
I just add something really quick to it because these are sometimes we run into this as well, specifically with fonts. Even though you embed the fonts in your ArcGIS Pro and you create the Illustrator file, it's important to know that the fonts should be available on the same machine as where your Illustrator file is open and where Illustrator is installed. This is because obviously, if you're going to be doing any editing with those fonts, then Illustrator needs to be able to load those fonts. So just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind as you're working with fonts in this workflow. Let's take one more question. And maybe I can speak to this as well. Sorry, there's a pop-up here.
So as we take that last question, Madhura, I'll just make you the presenter so that we can.
Does this look good, Ray?
Perfect.
Okay. So there was a question about, is there a way to remove or restyle the Powered by Esri background or customize it? And the answer to that is you can restyle the Powered by Esri background. It is artwork that is similar to other artwork that you would use in Illustrator. A quick note on this as well is that it's important, since you're sourcing content from many GIS and data providers, it's important to be aware of and understand the terms of use from that data provider and properly attribute those creators and data creators in your mapping work. As creatives ourselves, we certainly appreciate how important it is to kind of support each other in the work we do, and the same goes for mapping and any GIS related work as well. So as you explore how to use the extension in your mapping, also be mindful of the sources that you're accessing content from. And as a quick way, when you download a map from the extension, ArcGIS Maps for Adobe adds the credit notes to your map download, and you have the ability to use that in your map style and in your aesthetic as you might. So let's see, how are we doing on time? We have 1 minute. Ray, should I hand it off to you? There are a lot more questions here, and I think we'll need to follow up through a blog post or another webinar to kind of talk through some of these. And also, let's keep the conversation going on our community pages. I'd say there's a lot of great ideas. Some of you have run into issues either with licensing or with using your AIX files. I highly recommend that you reach out to us on our community page so we can work with you and get your maps and figure out if there's something missing at our end or if it's a workflow issue. So I recommend that we keep the conversation going on our community and on our forums. And with that, Ray, I'll hand it over to you.
And that is our webinar, folks. Thank you so much for attending. We will follow up with you with recordings and any more resources in a follow-up email. Thanks and happy holidays. Bye-bye.